Hello, everyone. This is Sinema77, horror and cult film lover. I do apologize. It's been like almost 2 weeks since the last time I posted a video. Just everything's been going crazy, and my work situation has been changing. And yeah, I'm hoping that here very soon I could kind of get all. I know I've been saying this for a while, but hopefully I can get all this crap sorted out and get back to posting on a more regular basis. But yeah, so anyway, I'm back with another movie review. Now, the last movie I reviewed was Wild Things, which that one came out in 1998. Well, apparently, let's see, 5 years later, they decided they needed to do a sequel to this. I guess the first one did very well enough that they could go ahead and do it. So the movie we're going to talk about today is Wild Things 2, Electric Boogaloo. No, it's not called Electric Boogaloo. I was just joking, but yeah. But the movie we're talking about today is going to be Wild Things 2. Now, the story is pretty. It is pretty similar to the first movie. I mean, the formula is very much similar, but with a few little twists and turns here. We'll go ahead and we'll start the review. Now, our story opens up. We got our main character, Brittany, played by Susan Ward here. Yeah, Brittany. We're going back to our favorite little town of Blue Bay, where the first movie took place at, and this is a place. After watching these movies, this is a place I would never ever want to live. Yeah, the women are gorgeous and sexy and everything else, but it's like being rich seems like it's a real pain in the ass, and all everybody's doing is just trying to kill everybody for the money and things like that. So, but anyway, yeah. So we got Brittany. She's living with her stepfather. Her mother, her mother died in an automobile accident. Also, too, I better go ahead and mention it first. Yeah, we're gonna have some spoilers. So, so our girl Britt here, she's living with her stepfather. Her mother died in an accident, and she's going to Blue Bay. She's kind of like the main girl on the volleyball team, and everything's going good. Seems like it follows kind of in the same path as the first movie, in that like all the kids at Blue Bay are being called into the auditorium for because they have a conference and things like that. Same thing, kind of like in the first movie. And then we're introduced to Maya, who is basically she's filling in for the Nev Campbell part for the first movie. Or so anyway, yeah, so Brittany, she goes out, she wins on the volleyball team, they win a game, and so they decide that they're going to go ahead and have a celebration at Brittany's house, which Brittany doesn't like, but they're going to do it anyway. So everybody's at Brittany's house, and they're booze all over the place. They're destroying the house, everything else. Typical teenage party, and all this. And so Brittany becomes very, triggered when one of the kids from school, he ends up, messing up a photo of her mother. And so she goes upstairs, and, she's upset, and her friend comes up, and her friend's kind of a ditzy airhead. She's just kind of, oh, gee, I'm sorry. Oh, don't be upset that they violated your mother's picture and stuff like that. So your dead mother's picture and stuff like that. I think that's kind of the biggest problem. I know I kind of sound like I'm all over the place with this, but that's kind of my biggest problem with a lot of these movies is the fact that there's not really anybody in these movies to root for. Everybody is so awful. I'm sorry to say that, but it's kind of the truth. Everybody in these movies are terrible. But anyway, so her stepfather comes home, and they get into this. They get into an argument. He chases everybody out of the house. And so, she's talking about how she's sorry, and he's all like, yeah, I can't trust you. You're just as bad as your fucking mother, and all this other kind of stuff. And he's like, I gotta leave and everything. She's all like, you could trust me. I'm your daughter. He's like, you're my stepdaughter. And so that night, Brittany, she's getting out of the shower and everything, and she's getting dressed, and she's hearing something from outside. And so she goes, and there's like a room that has like surveillance cameras and things like that. So she goes and she looks on the surveillance cameras, and she sees that her stepfather Niles, he's being attacked by this guy who's you owe me money, you don't pay money, I'm gonna f you up and all this stuff. So Brittany goes outside. She sees her father. Yeah, her stepfather. He's been beaten up a little bit, and so she's like, "Who was that guy? What's going on?" He's like, "Don't worry about it. I'll handle it," and stuff like that. So the very next day, he goes off on his trip, And Brittany, she's at school and she's upset, and her ditzy airhead friends like, hey, what's the matter? Is it a cute frat guy? And she's like, no, I don't want to talk about it, things like that. So she's trying to go about her day. And meanwhile, it's kind of cutting back and forth. We see that Niles is in his private jet that he owns and he flies himself, and he's starting to have problems with it. The plane's going down, and turns out that the plane crashed. So back at school, Brittany, she's being called into the principal's office, and so when she goes in there to find out, she's upset. She said, "No, not again. There's been an accident. There's a detective there at the principal. He's like, yeah, there's been an accident. Your stepfather, we think he's dead and all this stuff." And so, meanwhile, Maya apparently has been placed is kind of like a probation. She has to work like a week on the school newspaper to make up for some bad thing that she did. So, and anyway, yeah, like I said, so Maya, played by, I believe the actress's name is Leela Acker. I think that's the right way to say it. What right way to say it? Anyway, so she decides she wants to do a little bit of digging. Well, apparently it turns out that Maya and Brittany knew each other growing up. That apparently Brittany and her mother lived in a trailer park before Brittany's mother married Niles, and so yeah, she's kind of bitter that she's mad about the whole thing. That kind of like Brittany went off and became kind of she became one of the hoi polloi and just didn't stay friends with her, didn't keep contact, any of that stuff, and so she just kind of went on with her life and treated Maya like she was nothing. So anyway, while Maya's still on the newspaper, she finds out about Brittany's stepfather dying, and so she decides, well, hey, let's kind of put the screws to Brittany and say, like an heir needs to be sought, because it turns out, see, at first, Brittany thought when her stepfather died, she thought she was going to inherit everything. She thought she was going to get the house, the money, his business. She thought she was going to get all of it. Okay. And then we come to find out that no, that's not going to be the case. That the only thing she gets is she's going to get $25,000 a year to live on, which, that's not bad. I mean, but it's just middle class living. But, to Maya or to Brittany, who's, been living the good life the past few years, yeah, that's not going to work for her. She's not going to go for that. But they said, yeah, an heir needs to be determined. And if one cannot be brought up, then, okay. So then all the money's going to go back into the company. Everything's going to go back into a trust and everything else. And Brittany is pretty much, she's screwed. She's not going to get anything out of this. So they're going to court and they're, arguing about this whole thing. Well, Maya all of a sudden appears and she says that Niles was actually her real father. And so, they're talking about it and stuff. And she's saying that, her only proof really at first is saying, well, yeah, I have these love letters that he wrote to my mother. And she's kind of telling her story about how he had a fling with her and, she got pregnant with Maya. But the deal was, she's basically signed an agreement saying she wouldn't say anything, well, not so much she signed an agreement, but more she took a payoff. And, but anyway, instead of getting an abortion, she went ahead and had, Maya, the daughter, and she grew up and she wanted to get part of her father's inheritance. Well, not part of it, all of it. She wanted to get her father's inheritance because she felt like she earned it. And so the judge comes up and says, okay, well, here's the problem. You're going to have to submit for a DNA test. And so at first, Maya's a little upset about that. You can see she's kind of visibly upset about the whole thing. And Brittany's kind of like, okay, maybe, we're going to nail this bitch and stuff like that. So the very next day they come in and it turns out that, hang on a second. Sorry. But anyway, so the very next day they come back in and it turns out that they do the DNA test. The local coroner, he does the test and it turns out that Maya is actually, she matches Niles as a blood heir. So of course Brittany is not happy about this. She's very upset about it and everything else. So, but it turns out nothing can be done. That Maya is going to inherit the money, and there's nothing much more that can be done about it. Well, it turns out, so Brittany goes home, and this guy that assaulted Niles tries to attack her. Well, as luck would have it, he ends up getting arrested. All right. So now we get brought in. Now, a character named Bridge, who's played by Isaiah Washington, he gets called in, and he's an insurance investigator. Of course, like what happens when, somebody dies. They have a life insurance policy and stuff. They call in they call in an investigator to investigate all this stuff, make sure everything's all positive on the up and up, all this other kind of stuff. So, he's doing his job, and so he's like going around. He's talking to the local detectives. They want nothing to do with him. They think, it's like, hey, asshole, this is a tragedy. Just cut the girl her check and move on and stuff like that. And but Bridges, he's kind of thinking, yeah, nothing, this doesn't seem entirely right to me. I think there's a little bit more here than meets the eye, so I'm going to start doing some digging, which he does. And, so basically, Bridge is kind of he's kind of like Kevin Bacon's character from the first movie. If you saw the first movie, you see the detective character that Kevin Bacon played. Bridge is kind of a similar character in that situation. But so anyway, that night, Brittany is sitting at home. She's watching TV. She finds out on the news that, the guy that assaulted her and attacked Niles, he's been arrested. He's going to jail. He's going to be, pretty much gone for now. And so she goes in. She's like, going down to the wine cellar. Apparently Niles had this, great wine cellar with all these vintage wines that were worth a ton of money and everything. So she decides she's going to celebrate. And turns out one thing that ends up happening is we find out that there are rats in a trap in the cellar. But at the same time, while all this is going on, Bridge finds out that rats were found in the plane wreckage. That apparently they think that that's what made the plane go down. With these rats chewed up the wires, and that's what made the plane crash. And then who emerges but our good friend Maya. And of course, like the first movie, we find out that the whole thing was pretty much just a deliberate hoax. It was all a deliberate plan, and that the idea was that they would get the money, which turned out to be about $70 million. And now you got Maya and Brittany. We find out that the two of them are having a lesbian love affair, and that they're going to split the money and everything else. But that's not all that happens, though, because we find out that the coroner actually is in on the plan. And here we go. Similar to the first movie, we get the erotic lesbian scene who, it almost seems shot very familiar to the first movie. It's almost as if, I don't know if the director did this or not, but it's almost as if he watched the three-way scene from the first movie and just studied it so he could copy it shot by shot. Whereas like in this version, okay, Maya is pretty much Maya's the Denise Richards character, the coroner. He's the Matt Dillon character, and Brittany here, she's the Nev Campbell character. And so they get into their three-way. They have their nice little scene and everything, and then of course it kind of starts going into the same territory as the original movie, where you got the okay, it seems like things are getting ready to go off. Everything's going to be, everything's going to come out right in the end, and so you got. So you got Maya, she's the only one who's kind of keeping it together. Brittany seems like she's kind of losing her shit a little bit. The coroner, he's being questioned by Bridge, and so he's really losing it. And so he's becoming the one that they're like, okay, this guy, he's going to crack, and he's the one we got to deal with. We got to, take his ass out because he's the one who could spoil all this for everybody, so we got to do away with him. And so Brittany and Maya decide that they're going to come up with a plan that they're going to go ahead and they're going to, do away with the coroner. Julian is his name. And so, they tell him to meet them at a factory. And so turns out Maya brings a gun, and Brittany is all like, no, I don't want to shoot a gun. I can't shoot a gun and all this other kind of stuff. And so, Maya goes in and starts teaching her how to shoot a gun. And so Julian shows up. He's like, hey, can I get involved with this? And Brittany almost accidentally shoots him. And so he turns around, runs off. Well, Maya grabs the gun, and she's like, you go over here, I'll circle around and all this kind of stuff. So they're trying to lure him out. And Brittany is talking about, Miles, it's okay. It doesn't have to end this way. And so Julian, I'm sorry, did I say Miles? I'm sorry. But Julian comes up, he starts trying to strangle Brittany. And he's all like, how did you think this was going to end? One of us, it was either going to be you or me. It was one of us was going to die. And so Julian gets shot. Maya comes up and she's, kind of like, she's all like, okay, we got to get rid of the body, that kind of a thing. And then, Brittany is kind of all like, oh no, I can't do any of this stuff. And so she's, snap out of it. We got work to do and things like that. Come on, don't leave me hanging here. So they wrap up his body. They take him out to this, I forget the name of the place, but basically it's kind of like a swamp where the idea is they're going to dump the body in the swamp. The alligators will take care of it. And so they get out there and they see a cop car is approaching. So Maya decides to distract him. And meanwhile, Brittany is going to go ahead and dump Julian's body, which doesn't exactly go off without a hitch. He does. Turns out he's not all the way dead. So Brittany does end up actually, I believe it's a flashlight. She takes a flashlight and she ends up braining him to death. And then she dumps his body in the swamp. Well, now, it's coming up that Bridge, he's piecing everything all together and everything seems like it's going off. He's actually he goes to Brittany's house and, he sees the car that Brittany's driving, sees all the mud and everything on it. So he starts putting it together that, maybe the whole thing is, that Julian is dumped in the swamp. So the very next morning he calls out the detective and the detective comes out. And so, he's all like, yeah, I bet you anything, you'll find the body of Julian in there. And so, they're all like, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and we'll check it out and stuff like that. So the whole day goes by and, turns out, yeah, nothing's working out right and they don't find the body. So that night, you got like Maya and Brittany, they're getting ready to leave and, they're trying to pack and all this stuff. Well, so Maya comes over to pick Brittany up and it turns out Brittany's like, we can't go. And is like, why can't we? And, and Bridges shows up. And lo and behold, guess what? Turns out he's crooked. Well, who didn't see that coming? So he ends up telling her about, yeah, it's like I found, it turns out that there's a form of tree there that it sucks up everything. And that includes blood. So I found the blood of Julian and all this kind of stuff. And so, of course, he's all like, you have a choice. Either you can either cut me in on the deal or, I could go ahead and go to the police and tell them everything. And so, so at first Maya's, yeah, we'll cut you in for this part. He's like, no, I want in on the score. He's like, I want half of that $70 million. I want 35 million in my hands. Turns out, well, Brittany's not really happy about that. We got to come to find out. Brittany here is very, very money hungry. And so anyway, so Brittany goes off and she's like, no, fuck this. I'm not giving up my half of the inheritance and stuff like that. And so, Maya is telling Bridges, don't worry about her. I can handle her. No big deal. And so, he goes out and she goes out. She's going to try to seduce him. And she's saying, like, yeah, it's really nice to meet somebody who could go through this shit like I can and stuff. Then they turn around. They see that Brittany here is standing there. She's holding the gun. And she's all like, at first, Maya is all like, go ahead and shoot him. Then it could just be the two of us. And so she ends up shooting Maya in the head. And so Bridge, he's upset about this. And so Maya tells him, you want half of that inheritance. You're going to have to earn it, by God. And so he's like, okay, he's shaking. He's about ready to piss himself because, he almost got shot. And so, he's taking Maya's body, putting it in the trunk of the car. They're going to go dispose of it. And on their way there, they come up to a stoplight. And right behind them, a police car shows up. And so Brittany decides she's going to go ahead and double cross Bridge. And he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she's all like, you going to try to stop me? I dare you, especially with the cop right behind you. And so she gets out, she walks off. And so he tries to drive away. And, he's still got the cop on his ass. And he's like, fuck. I knew that double crossing bitch and stuff. And so she goes and she finds a payphone. That tells you how long ago this movie was made. There were still payphones around. But anyway, so she calls the cops. She gives him the information, the make and model of the car. She gives him the license plate number, and pretty much Bridge is picked up immediately. And so he goes in, he's talking to the detective and all this stuff. And so, meanwhile, all kinds of things are going on. It's juxtaposing back and forth. And so it turns out that Bridge ends up saying that, hey, wait a minute, I just figured this out. Niles is not dead. He faked his own death because of all these gambling debts, it turns out, that he has. And so, yeah, that's the thing. And they're all like, dude, the thing is, we got you with a dead girl in your trunk, all this other kind of stuff. You were picked out by suspects and all this stuff. So yeah, so you're going to jail no matter what you do. So Bridges, kind of doesn't do himself any favors by cursing out the detective, and he's taken off to jail. Well, meanwhile, while all this is going on, you got Brittany. She gets into a helicopter, gets up in the air, and then turns out Bridges right. That Niles is not dead. Another little twist in the story. And so, they're getting ready to leave. They're getting, the idea is they're going to fake the plane crash, again. And then the idea is going to look like both Brittany and Niles are dead. Then the two of them will go off. They'll take all the money and pretty much, flee the country, live in the lap of luxury and all this other kind of stuff. And so, at first he doesn't trust her with the parachute she gives him. So she gives him another one. And, it kind of almost like it's almost kind of like the scene in Princess Bride where Wesley is like trying to do the wine trick, with the guy who's, what was it? Bazzini, I think his name was, the one who kidnaps the princess. Was like, trying to figure out which wine has the poison in it. It's something similar. So he takes the parachute that she has, and, she tells him that, and all this, he's sitting there talking about how your mother had no fucking brains and she's an idiot. She never would have had the balls to pull something like this off and everything. And so he opens up the door and she's like, hey, I forgot to tell you something. He's like, what's that? And I filled your parachute with newspaper, you asshole. I knew all the times you cheated on her and everything else and treated her badly and everything. And she ends up kicking him out of the helicopter. He pulls the parachute cord. And like she said, the whole thing is just newspapers flying out. Turns out it's a school newspaper talking about his death. So anyway, so she jumps out of the plane. Speedboat comes up, picks her up. Turns out it's her mother. Turns out her mother was never dead. Don't know where she was all this time, but the mother was never dead. So the two of them are like, let's go get our money and let's go live in luxury for the rest of our lives. We earned it and stuff like that. And so, kind of like at the end credits, they're kind of like piecing everything together. And we find out that what happened was the way that they were able to do the DNA. It wasn't so much that Julian faked the reports. It's that they dug up Maya's father's corpse and put it in the plane and substituted that for Niles. So that's how they were able to get the DNA off of it. So the DNA did get extracted properly and things like that. So, but then, we come to find out all this other stuff. And then it ends with Brittany comes out. She's got like two Bloody Marys, gives one to her mom, and she takes one, and they're sitting there, they're drinking, and here's to living in luxury for the rest of our lives. And her mother drinks it, and she's like, wow, this is really strong. And Brittany's kind of like, yeah, they do make them strong here. And so that kind of gives you the indication that Brittany is so money hungry that she's going to end up killing her mother and take the money all for herself. And that's pretty much where Wild Things 2 ends. So, guess it would help if I held it the right way up, huh? But anyway, it's an okay sequel. It's not great though. I mean, it just feels kind of like the biggest thing you got going here is just you got like beautiful women to look at, and they're different from the first movie. But ultimately, the movie just feels a little bit too much more just like a rehash of the first movie. It feels, even though it's a sequel, it feels more like a remake of the first movie. So it's kind of a little bit boring in that sense that you kind of like you already know what's going to happen before it happens, and it's just kind of hard though too because I think the biggest problem with these movies, like I said earlier, like everybody in these movies are such scumbags that it's hard to care about them that, you just kind of don't care. You don't care who all dies. You don't care who wins. You kind of just want to see everybody get killed off. Like these nasty, rich, miserable people are just horrible and you just don't like them anyway. But anyway, if you like the first movie, you probably like this one. It's good to have it, if you want to build like an erotic thriller collection, it'd be good to have for that. There is some nudity, pretty interesting, nice women to look at, but ultimately it's just kind of meh. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. But So yeah, so that's pretty much about it. So if anybody took the time to watch all this, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I also hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. I promise I really am going to try to get more better content put out. So hopefully stay tuned. Don't leave on me just yet. I'll try to get some good stuff out for everybody. And so that's it. Everybody take care, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.